You guys are very particular. Sheesh.
Yeah, we're tight.
They don't mess around, man.
They don't.
Ready to go?
Rolling? Yes, sir.
Mr. President, let's start with some news of the day. Jihadi John, reportedly identified as of today. Can you give us a sense of how large of a priority it is, symbolically and otherwise, for you and your administration to find this guy and bring him to justice?
Well, look, anytime any American is harmed anywhere in the world, the United States government is going to be going after that person. I'm not going to comment on this particular case, but we have been consistent and we are patient. And eventually, if you hurt an American, you're going to be brought to justice in some fashion. More broadly, obviously, is to make sure that we continue on the process of pushing back against ISIL. I've got legislation before Congress right now to give me the authorizations and our military the authorizations to do what we need as part of this broader coalition. I'm confident we'll get the job done. It'll take a little bit of time, but in the end, this death cult that's developed there is a dead end, and we're going to be able to work with Arab countries as well as the world to defeat them.
You recently vetoed the Keystone Pipeline. Yeah. Safety concerns, environmental concerns. A lot of people in our state of Washington are really nervous and concerned about the oil trains, that this will mean there will be more oil trains, that we can't guarantee the safety. We had a near disaster in Seattle with a derailed train. Can you give some reassurance to the people who watch those trains rolling through their communities every single day?
Well, first of all, what's remarkable is the energy production we've seen in the United States, in part because of new technology, new techniques. We're the biggest oil producer, biggest gas producer, as well as the biggest clean energy producer because of investments that my administration's made. That's all good. It's good for consumers. It's good for geopolitics. We don't have to be as reliant on Middle Eastern oil or Russian oil or some other places that aren't real savory. But we have to be concerned about safety. And my Department of Transportation actually has been looking very carefully, talking to all the stakeholders, railways, environmentalists, railway workers, about what we need to do to improve rail car safety when they're carrying these potentially hazardous materials. But it's a good news story if we do it right. And it hurts us if in our rush to get more oil or more gas, we end up contaminating the incredible bounty that God's given us in this country, and no place is prettier than the Pacific Northwest.
Let's talk a little bit of trade. As you know, we have Microsoft, we have Amazon, we have Boeing. We export 90% of the country's apples that are exported, and machinery and wheat and all those things. The TPP, what is that going to mean, not just for the big corporations, but for, say, the guy working on the line at Boeing, or the small-time farmer, or the small-time exporter? What's in it for them?
Listen, no state has more at stake in us getting this trade deal than Washington. You've got billions of dollars of exports, tens of thousands of jobs in the Washington state area that are at stake. And it's not just the big companies. When you look at Boeing, they've got a supplier chain that goes all the way down to a mom and pop store who may be making one specialized widget that goes into that plane. And the Pacific is the biggest market in the world, and it's just growing faster and faster. It's the most dynamic market. If we don't do this trade deal, China will be writing the rules, and they'll reinforce rules that are already disadvantaging us today. We can't have that. So we've negotiated the toughest labor provisions ever in a trade deal, toughest environmental provisions ever. We're raising standards in the region, and by raising standards, that means we can compete, and it's small and medium-sized businesses who account for a huge portion of the overall exports. And it turns out, by the way, the jobs for people who export, for companies that export, typically pay substantially more than any other job out there. We want to be selling in those countries. It's good for business, and it's good for the American worker. So I hope that the entire Washington delegation gets behind it.
Last thing as I leave, would you have passed it or run it down at the goal line in the Super Bowl?
You know what? Love Pete Carroll. Love the Seahawks. They've built a great culture. You know, Monday morning quarterbacking is easy.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
the truth of the matter is, you guys were there to compete 2 years in a row, and you're going to have a great young team for a long time to come. So congratulations.
Excellent, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Great.
Thank you so very much.
Appreciate you.